What I chose first is feedback. And I thought feedback was just giving your paper to the teacher and doing what she said. Like explaining my grammar and punctuation. And what I wanted to discuss that before I just do that, check for grammar. And to begin it, my first example is to talk about how I was requesting feedback. How I did it was checking what sounded okay, what didn't make sense at all. Also nothing if a certain sentence should belong here or should be completely removed. It's by making sense of what you think makes sense and asking someone else if it can be understood the way you're trying to make it out to be. I mean, how I applied it, I started putting the words together of what I wanted back from the individual that I'm asking. I highlighted where exactly, like here, I was highlighting what I wanted them to read and where I wanted the help, which I explained in here. Thoroughly have thought of it, what could use improvement. The challenge that arose is asking where exactly I needed the help, where like I really needed the help instead of just asking, oh, just here. I examined my paper several times to know where it sounds awful and where I didn't need help. And the impact it made on me, it really puts in perspective when you're asking for what is wrong with the paper. And maybe you can find a solution yourself when you're asking. And try to put what I'm asking into words. So I'm not wasting my time or someone else's. My second example is how I ask for my feedback. And it's I thought it was just putting into words what you thought is wrong or could use an improvement in your work and asking directly exactly what you want second eyes on by getting comments of how it could be better. Like I said right here, like I have rewritten it in different manner, but I would like feedback of how it's written and if it relates and how it could better correlate to what I'm trying to say. By applying it to the essay point, I raised what I wanted to ask and implementing the feedback into my paper. The obstacle that always arises is what you advise me to do best for my paper, or could I do more on my own? But again, I ask for the help that I'm asking for, but maybe they're not going to give me like what I'm asking for, which really improves the paper in the end to get the best piece of work I can do. I'm doing this for my third point. When I was doing this for my classmates, it really got me thinking of how, and like how asking the same question for another classmate to do for myself, and implementing that when I was answering the question for my classmate on their work. First, I thought I wanted to ask for myself and how I could put that into form when answering my classmates' question for feedback. I read what they asked me to do. If they asked for a grammar check, I would check the grammar. Sometimes they would ask the same question as me, like they just wanted a second pair of eyes. I did just that. Really, it's just applying what you know and how to improve the classmate's essay. And if they said like it doesn't sound right, I would read it, and if they didn't thoroughly explain what exactly they wanted, I'll just read it and my comments upon it. But mainly, a lot of them, my classmates' comments were vague. They weren't as specific, and I was just trying my best to answer their questions as if I was asking the question for my paper. And I did that and so forth. But the challenge was, again, they weren't as specific, so how could I properly advise them what to do, how to fix the paper? And I just kept myself together and did what they asked me to do, just move on. I took the points of the questions that they asked and what I read upon their paper to better my outcome for my paper. Understood the feedback I gave and got from my paper. My fourth point for feedback is that it's not always about grammar. Sometimes it's about content and how you can improve on content. And how I began is by revising what they asked or put in their comments, as right here, because I asked like if the sentence made sense right here where I highlighted, and they told me yeah, like what the information I put there does matter, but if I were asking like for this quote I added into the essay. They talked about how I wanted to leave it there, but move it actually, and told me that it should stay there. The challenge was that continuing when I was applying it, the feedback that I received was just to advise me to keep it, best fit. Because I was asking the importance of certain sections of my paper and wondering if they belonged in a certain place. I mean, they told me what I thought already, and I kept it where it is. The challenge was if the feedback could have been better that was given to me. Because, again, I was asking how to improve my paper, and I just ended up in the same place. And how I overcame the challenge is when I asked the teacher the same question, if I should have put this in the end. And well, you answered it, of course, of who's my audience, what I'm talking about, and that's the feedback I'm looking for. It really improves what I'm thinking and get my thoughts together. I should really try to improve my work on my own as best as I can and use the feedback from others as the last resort, depending on papers I get assigned in the future. When I'm writing another class, I'll know what to do. Next time I'm going to ask for very specific help to help me develop the content of my ideas. I won't just be handing my paper over, letting them do whatever they want with it. Because I'm not asking for help. I'm asking for a way I can improve when I write essays in the future, improving myself and my thoughts, one essay at a time. My second point is research process. What I knew before, it was just like gathering data, talking about the signed paper I had. Took really like a lot of hours of my time to find everything I needed, but never having a straightforward way to do it. What I learned in this class was a time-saving, effective, and extremely thorough worksheet called Craft Sheets. I put all the data together as here, as I put the dates, the author, what's it about, what's associated with it, like some notes which I added, who wrote it, that's about it, and so much more. Help primarily with secondary sources, which before was a pain to do. What I thought is its effectiveness as a secondary source, and this really helps determine if it is. Help me collect the data. First, I thought how it could work. It asks you in the top to place a citation, which is really helpful for when you're writing the paper and you want to place the citation later. And you start filling in the information, you start understanding what your secondary source is and what's it talking about. How I applied it is to find studies and get the year it was publicized and have a brief summary, as I shown before, of what it's about. The years, the challenge was the years, like 1962. But again, they're laws, like they stay relevant in society. So I accepted that. The impact it had on me was the credibility of my paper immensely. And putting the secondary sources together never been so effective and less time consuming than with the Craft Sheets. Like, it's never been this easy. My second point on research is it the best way I could talk about the essay I'm creating? Because I wanted to do the Rosenhan experiment that was done on psychiatric diagnosis, which starts to talk about how to diagnose an insane person. But then I'll just be talking about them and what they found in their research. And I really wanted to create some content that was with my words. So I thought, like, I'll leave this as my fifth, like, secondary source and talk more about the laws. I used several questions that were used with the model penal code. to make a test similar to the one I'm going to show. Like the insanity test, you answer certain questions, and later it tells you, like, if you're on the verge of insanity, or you should talk to a doctor or something. The impact it left on me was knowing that I'm talking about what I want to talk about rather than filling in space of someone else's work and thoughts. Because I really wanted to discuss with as much freedom as I could have with the data I analyzed and collected to better provide the best response for my paper for my audience. My third point was because I wanted to implement a program like in Harvard about dealing with insanity or mental health, and it really built like an outline for me. Like they had a counseling, numbers, mission, all these other tabs for you. I'm thinking, like, why doesn't UTRGV have that? Mainly to treat students under high pressure, stress, to treat them. It talks about how they talk to students. They have a physician in place for students, even a hotline. And it really helps to build like this research outline that I started thinking about for how UTRGV could apply this to the school. Like how they only have right now a hotline. Maybe they can have a counselor or someone to talk about. And it really helps with my research because it's less time consuming. There's already a program in place and built that can be used to be placed in UTRGV. And I just thought, if this is here, like maybe any other data is out there in the web, you just gotta look for it. It really helps to have a crap sheet and determine all the certain information so you can better implement it into your paper. My fourth and final thought or point in research was finding credible sources, because there's a lot of articles like this one, like the definition of insanity is by someone called Ryan House with a PhD and who knows what an ABPP is. And it's mostly about ads, like other popular articles. It talks about a movie, I think, and it's more like a magazine. And I started thinking, like, I have to find better credible sources. And the laws I used were credible, like in place in government. Because what I was discussing so difficult to find data on. So I had to think like credibility first, rather than buddy's personal view on something, and proper documentation and words and studies done by others, implemented into laws and tests. The impact it left on me is by knowing what kind of secondary sources to use, and those I should avoid altogether. When talking about my research, it's extremely important using the crap sheet developed by Bonnie. It's possibly the most effective way to collect data, which is a good thing for a student doing a paper to develop the best and most effective paper to discuss a certain topic. Finally, my last point is writing with purpose. Mainly this is going to be me talking. What I wanted to discuss was insanity and what to gain from it, like what to be understood and what my audience will get from it. What I didn't know before is I always heard how college can be stressful, especially in finals. Some students can go binge drinking to relieve stress or forget the stress. But what if it's worse somewhere else or with someone else? And I understood what I learned is college is hard, but it shouldn't be so difficult to the point where you start thinking on whether you belong at a school or not. Even to the point of giving up your dreams entirely. Worst case scenario, you're dead. But it's just a little bit too much. Okay, first thing I learned is it important to me? Like, why am I discussing this? Would I'm discussing it be important to my audience as well? First I thought, who would really read or care of what I was writing? I began to search the stress and pressure applied on students and how what I'm discussing could relate to them and give purpose to my research. I began to discuss how college students are placed under pressure and stress on my paper to finalize who I'm talking to. Can what I say change the mind of someone's reading my paper under what I'm categorizing as mental disorders and stress? Could they be going through the same things as the people I've listed in the book concept I made? And how maybe it could change their attitude towards what they're dealing with. And what it left on me was I have to value this project I made because I'm sane and maybe someone isn't. And then I realized I'm calm at times, but it really made me understood how important a paper can be, not for me, but for someone else reading it, and its value it could have upon them. My second point in writing with purpose is it connected to me? Do I feel like these people in the stories? Am I under the same stress and pressure? And subconsciously I'm asking myself the question through a research assignment of whether it's just a little bit too much that's placed upon myself. I mean, I began to write the paper on how I could feel at times really stressed out. I wonder if it gets difficult for me, how do other people feel? I started looking for programs or publications talking about what I'm thinking. When I did the project for the class about the video assignment, my project for it was the concept of a book right here, with other publicized stories or how people went through stuff during school and how they got through it, if they got through it. So others could read them and really get into the emotional aspect of writing. Does this all concern me or any significance for another? Well, yeah, you gotta go look on the news how many people kill themselves because they can't get the thought of their worth out of their head when they're in school and comparing each other. And I mean, these words could just be enough to change someone, like thinking if they want to commit suicide. And what it left on me, it matters what you talk about, how you feel, and the thoughts you have. How a research assignment can be more of what it is. Impacted me to always have the best intentions when writing and make sure it has purpose, rather than just turning some sheet of paper in. My third point is I wanted to give purpose to the stories, to have some significance. That's why I placed them in my concept book, and how it can have that point of view I'm trying to get across through emotional words. I really want to get that issue of insanity and mental disorders out. I wanted my writing to mean something, especially to me as an affirmation that I'll be okay, but also those reading my paper. I gave a brief summary of what I wanted to get out of the book. Like I discussed, like you could read some things if you have a certain point or you like a certain thought, you can go to the notes page and add a note of what you thought and add the page number just to discuss more about what the thoughts these people left. The challenge was like if someone was gonna write or not. So I did the video, put like subtitles, tried to get some connection out if they didn't read the book, so I could provide additional insight to the video if they just watched that. The impact they left on me, the work you do means something, maybe in some cases not to you, but to a certain individual. But I wanted to provide my classmates with reassurance that can get difficult sometimes, even compare yourself to other people, compared to yourself, like your life to those in the stories. Knowing that you're okay, there's help available, just gotta keep going. My fourth and final point for writing with purpose is that my goal is always trying to write with emotional communication. I try by implementing emotion on my paper, like I said before, to get certain reactions across. Like talking about how people's stories, how I feel. I put in the book like an essay, quotes, feelings, try to get something across, even like to the point where people would apply their feedback on paper. Knowing that there's an actual feeling in a paper is not just some lump of information. I'm talking about inside, so get creative. That's when I think get creative, start speaking and get some ideas across. That's why, again, I added the quote